We're going to talk first about what Excel is and how to get access to Excel if you don't already have it. We'll talk about how to create and save Excel workbooks, how to use simple formulas and functions, and how to enter, format, and copy information in your spreadsheets. So what is Excel? It's a good place to start. And Microsoft Excel is a powerful spreadsheet program which allows users to enter, manage data in the form of numbers, text, and formulas. Excel wasn't the first spreadsheet program. Some of you may remember VisiCalc, I think was the first one out there, the first really popular one anyway. Then Lotus 1-2-3 was king of the hill, but Excel's been king of the hill for quite a while now and is pretty much the undisputed market leader in the spreadsheet area. However, Google Sheets is gaining popularity. Google Sheets is Google's version of Excel. They are very similar. Okay. So how do you get access to Excel? There are multiple ways to get access to Excel. The primary way that Microsoft encourages people to use is by licensing Microsoft 365. It is an annual subscription that is $70 a year, $69.99, same thing. But it includes a lot. You get Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, OneNote, all the Office software. You also get OneDrive, which is Microsoft's cloud storage system with a terabyte of data, 1,000 gigabytes. So quite a bit in there. If you don't have Microsoft 365 yet and you're trying to decide if it's worth it, or if you have it, you want to make sure you're getting your money's worth, we have a class called Microsoft 365 Overview. So I'll put a link to that class in the email that comes out after class if you want to find out more about that. If you still have an old version, you used to purchase Excel, it probably still works, but it's probably not being updated with all the new functions and features. And you can also get Excel as a free online package. So you can run Excel in a browser as a free version, but it does not give you all the functions and features you would get with Microsoft 365. It is pretty much a stripped down version of Excel. And I'll have a link in the email as well to tell you a little bit more about that free package if you want to find out more about that one. Let me see if there's any questions before I leave this screen. All right.
Quick question.
Sure.
I am an Apple user, so jumping in on this because I'm curious about learning about spreadsheets, and I think that this will help me gain a lot of knowledge about spreadsheets in general. But is the Excel able to operate on a Mac?
Yes, there is a Microsoft 365 for Apple. In fact, we do have another class. I'm not sure when that one's going to be offered, but we have a Microsoft 365 for Mac users.
Oh, okay.
And you could also access this online version through a web browser on a Mac. So yeah, you can, it will work on the Mac.
Thank you.
Sure,
Excuse
good
me,
question.
Joe, follow up
Sure.
on her. Does the data that you put into it in Microsoft roll over to your Apple and vice versa? Once you have a spreadsheet, can you go back and forth?
No, not really. I mean, you can't use, you can't use the, I forget what Apple calls it. Apple has a spreadsheet package program as well. But you couldn't have a single file and jump back and forth between Apple's version of Excel and the Microsoft version of Excel.
Okay.
But you could run Microsoft 365 on a Windows machine and access the file, and then go get Microsoft 365 on your Mac and access the same file. So the file you could access from either platform.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure. All right, good questions. So I'm going to go ahead, and I am using a Windows computer, and I will be using Microsoft 365 since that is the full-featured and current version. If you're running Windows, there's two ways to get there. You can just click on the Start menu over here. And this will look slightly different depending on whether you're Windows 10 or Windows 11. I'm on Windows 11. So on Windows 11, if you have a shortcut, have it pinned, it would be here. But if you don't, you could click All Apps, which will show you all the apps that you have under Windows, and just come down to Excel and click on it here. So that's the way to find any program that you have on your Windows machine, and it will bring up Excel to the Excel homepage. You can also save a shortcut to your taskbar, and I'll use that in the future. So a couple of different ways to get there. But this is the home screen, and there's two sections to the home screen. The top section where it says new is where you can create a new workbook. And there's two ways to do that. You can just start with a blank workbook, and I'll click into that to show you what that looks like. And as advertised, it is just an empty spreadsheet that you can start building something from scratch. I'm going to just close out of here and reopen Excel down using this option just to show you how to use it if you've got it down here in your taskbar. It's the fastest way to get there. The other way you can access create a new workbook is to use a template. And if you've opened any templates, they'll be here on your home screen. But this is where you get to the full list of templates where it says more templates here. So I'm going to click on that link over on the right-hand side. And Excel has dozens and dozens of these templates. That's one difference between Google Sheets and Excel. Excel has a lot more templates. In fact, it even breaks them into categories for you. There's so many. So for today, we'll look at personal, since most of you, I assume, are going to be using it for personal reasons. So I'll click personal there, and it'll show me all the templates that would be used for personal things. And just to give you some ideas of how you might use Excel, you can have a monthly budget, a weekly chore schedule, to-do list, mileage trackers, family tree using photos, family tree just using text. You can wedding timeline planner, wedding expense budget planner. There's checkbook, balancing spreadsheets, travel spreadsheets. You can go through these later at your leisure. But as I said, there are dozens and dozens of templates that are available. If you're not familiar with what a template is, I'll go back. I'm going to go back here and make sure I grab the one I meant to grab. Let's do a simple personal budget. That's something everybody might want to use. And so to open a template, all you have to do is just click on the template. So I'm going to use this one, the simple personal budget. And it brings up this screen telling me a little bit about that template and confirming that I do want to create it. And all I have to do is click here where it says create, and it will copy that template into my computer, and it is now set up. There's two tabs down here, and all of your workbooks have multiple tabs. The first tab here where it says start just tells you a little bit about the template. I click the next tab here beside it to get to the actual template itself. And this template is set up like a typical Excel table. It has columns for each month. It has rows for each item in your budget, revenue items, expense items. And then if you wanted to just use it, you would just start filling in your information. It gives you some sample information just so you can kind of see how it works, but you could delete that or just type over it and start entering your information. And you see, as I do that, it totals columns. So the subtotals here. And if you go over to the right, it's totaling over here as well. This uses functions, and I'll show you how to use functions a little bit later. So one thing, if you do bring up a template and you're just going to use it as is, you have to be careful that you don't delete the row or column that has these functions in there. You're free to enter anything in the sections. If you click on a cell and there's nothing there, you can enter your information. but that's kind of how a template works. It's a good way to get a head start in something if you want to use it as is. Or if you want to just look at templates, and I'll do this sometimes, I'll look at them and get some ideas, and then I'll go build it myself, but stealing ideas from the templates.
To
Questions?
enter data into a cell, you just click on the cell and type?
Yes. Yep. And we're going to go
Thank
there
you.
next and show you how to enter information into a spreadsheet. Yeah. In fact, by the end of the class, these will make a lot more sense than they do now, probably. So I'm going to go ahead and close this one out as well. And just come back in again. I'm not going to save this since I don't want to keep it. So that's how you can start a new workbook from scratch or by starting with a template. So that's the top part of the screen. The lower part of the screen shows you all the workbooks that you have access to. The first tab here shows you all the spreadsheets, and it's sorted by most recent on top. And you can scroll down through them. The second tab has pinned. And these are spreadsheets that you want to make sure you can get to quickly and easily. And after a while, this list may get pretty long, and maybe there's something that you use 3 or 4 times a year, so it's not going to be at the top of the list maybe, but you don't want to scroll down through a great long list to find it. What you can do is to pin it, and the way you do that, this is a workbook I created for class for today. If I wanted to pin this, all I have to do is come over here to the pin and click on it. And that has now been pinned. If I click here on the pin tab, there's that spreadsheet that I just pinned. So this is where you put the ones that you want to make sure you can always find. If I change my mind and I don't want it to be in this pinned tab any longer, I just take the pin out basically by clicking on the pin again. It unpins it. It's now gone from this list. It's still over here in my recent workbooks tab. And the last one over here has workbooks that are owned by somebody else, but they've shared them with you. So you have access to them by virtue of the fact that someone else has shared it. So this is the owner. They've shared this with me. I can open it. I can edit it if that person has given me edit privileges. If they haven't, then I can just look at it. I could save a copy of it if I wanted to save a copy, but the owner controls what privileges I have. And I'll show you how to share one at the end of class if we have time. If not, we definitely will cover that in the intermediate class. So questions about these 3 tabs and where all your workbooks are? Okay, so if everybody's good, we're going to open this workbook that I created for class today, and we'll actually get into how you use one. And oops.
Can you tell me how you named that workbook?
Yes. Let me, because I need to go. I'm going to. When you create a workbook, you can name it. Let me open this. And I've got 2 open. I opened the wrong one by mistake here. So let me close that one and just leave the one that I meant to have open here. When you create it, you give it a name, but you can go up in and change the name at any time as well. And so I can click here where it has the name. This is the name of this file. And all I have to do is click here and I can change the name.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So it's right up here in the top. It's got a little down arrow to let you know you can click there and there's something hidden underneath it. So anytime you see an arrow, click it. Okay. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the layout of the spreadsheet in case you're not familiar with it. First, you've got a number of tabs here. And as you click through these, you'll see that the second row changes. So these are the highest level. These are the tabs, sometimes called sheets. The next level is called group. This is called the ribbon, in fact, this whole thing, because it looks a bit like a ribbon. The ribbon is broken into groups. So I'm in the home sheet or tab. Here, this is the font group, the alignment group. And then within the group, it has all the different commands you can use. And so as I go from tab to tab, my ribbon changes. There's different groups with different functions. And as you can see, there are lots of functions you can use, lots of commands you can enter. Luckily, you don't have to use all of them to use Excel. In fact, we're going to use a very small percentage of them today. We're not going to be doing anything out of this one home tab. So this has most of the things you're going to be using. And then this is the spreadsheet itself. And a spreadsheet is composed of cells. And a cell is the intersection of a column and a row. And the cell has the name, which is the column letter and the row number. So this cell is D7. It's right here where I can see what cell I'm in. So if I click over here somewhere else, it'll tell me I'm now in M18, column M, row 18. So this is handy to know. This is always telling you what cell you're currently in. There's 4 things you can store in a spreadsheet. You can store numbers, you can store text, you can store dates, and you can store formulas. We'll talk about each one of those. We'll start with numbers. And I'm going to click here on that cell, which is B3. And I can see 5.28 here on the screen. If I look up here, and this is called the formula bar, this shows me the actual contents of that cell. So what I see on my screen isn't necessarily what's stored in the cell, because I can format what these cells look like. So in this case, the actual contents are 5.278456. I chose to format to only show 2 decimal places, so it rounds that to 5.2728. We'll go into formatting in a lot more detail later, but just to kind of show you that, I can come up here and change how many decimal places I want just by clicking this little control here to add or delete decimal places. So that's how you can, one way to format the contents. But the main point there is what you see isn't necessarily what's in there. You have to click on the cell and look up here, or double click in the cell and it'll put the actual contents. Whenever you've got that flashing cursor, that means I can edit it from here. So I've now changed it, or I can edit it from up here as well. Text is a little simpler. Here, what you see is what's stored in the cell. Of course, you can still format what it looks like. You're not changing the actual value. But if I wanted to do typical things like bolding that or centering it, I can format it, but it still says shirts. This is the handy command up here. This is the undo. So if I don't like what I did, I can put it back like it was. Dates are actually numbers. They're a special case of number. And again, you notice what I see here is Thursday, January 2nd, 2020. What's actually stored in the cell is just the date itself. I have formatted it to give me a different version of that information. And if I want to change that more, I can go up here to this drop down. And I've got a short date or a long date here. Short date would change it to look like that. The long date is what I was using already. But you can actually also come down here to more number formats. And you've got different types of numbers. But as I said, a date is a type of number. And this shows me all the different formats that I can use for dates. So if I wanted it to be formatted like this, I can click here and say, okay. And now it's reformatted it using that format. I'm going to undo that and put it back like it was. Questions about dates? That one's a little more complicated. And finally, formulas. So here I click, what I see is 525. When I come up here to the formula bar, which is why this is called the formula bar, I can see the actual contents, and the actual contents is an algebraic equation, 12 plus 3 times 35. I can edit that formula up here. I can double click in that cell and edit it down here. Anytime you see an equal, that means it's a formula or a function, which is a special type of formula. We're going to talk about those next.
Wade, did you use up in the ribbon bar, or the what do you call it? Yeah, the ribbon up there.
The ribbon is here, yeah.
Yeah, did you use one of those, like where it says format cells to put a format in?
No, well, when you're formatting, most of the formatting stuff is up here. So like this is where, and we're going to do a lot of formatting a little bit later. So we'll kind of hold off on that discussion. But just for a quick example, if I wanted to say this was currency, I would click here and it changes it to currency. But we're going to go over all the formatting a little bit later. But yeah, so most of your formatting is up here in the ribbon under the Home tab. So I'm going to go, formulas are one of the two main parts of a spreadsheet. So we're going to talk a little bit more about formulas. And we're going to start with just some very simple formulas. So I'm going to create a formula to add 42 and 148. To do that, I put an equal sign that tells Excel I'm entering a formula, not entering numbers. And then from here, it's just like using a calculator. 42, hit plus on the keyboard, type 148. Hit enter on the keyboard. It gives you the answer just like you'd see the answer on your calculator. I can see my formula up here. I can double click and see it down here. I can edit it either place. Now that's not a typical formula. You're not typically adding two numbers. Normally in spreadsheets, you're working with cells. So a more typical formula might be something like divide the contents of B3, whatever that is, by 10. But it works the same way. I'm going to say equal, and then I can type B3, and I'm going to do that just to show you. I can type it on the keyboard and then say divided, which is the slash, by by 10. So I'll type 10. 190 divided by 10 is indeed 19. There's my formula, B3 divided by 10. Now you've probably guessed by now is you can also have formulas that only reference cells. You don't have any hard-coded numbers in there. So if I want to subtract B5 from B3, I would say equals. And so I would, and instead of typing, I could type B3 again, but instead of typing, I normally just click the cell. When I click this cell, it puts B3 in my formula for me. Then I'm going to say minus, and then I'm going to click the next cell I want to put in my formula. So I'll click here. It puts B5 in my formula for me. And I hit enter. And now there's my formula. B3 minus B5. 190 minus 19 is indeed 171. Okay. I can edit that formula up here. I can also edit it down here. And one thing it does as well, if you've got cell references, it actually shows you where those cells are. And sometimes this is handy because if I was adding something here to something over here and subtracting something down here, this helps you find the cells that are in your formula. Questions so far? And that's about all that there is in terms of formulas. That's, if you know basic algebra, it follows all the same rules as algebra.
Does, excuse me, does it save the data on the fly, or do you have to physically save your data?
That's try and give you a short answer, but that's not a short answer. It depends on where you're saving the file. If you're using OneDrive, which is Microsoft's cloud storage system, and you have autosave turned on like I do, every time I type something, it automatically saves it. If you are not using OneDrive, this would be off, and you'd have to click save here to save what you're doing. Now, if you try to exit before you've saved, it's going to tell you you haven't saved your spreadsheet. Do you want to save it? So it does remind you you haven't saved, but you would have to click save or you'll lose it.
Thank you.
Sure. I mentioned that dates are numbers, which means you can do math with dates, which is handy in a lot of cases. So if I wanted to know, for example, how many days is it from December 4th, 2021 to January 24th, 2022, I can write a formula and say equals 124.22 minus 12/4/2021, just like any other formula, and it'll tell me there's 51 days between those two dates. I could also do things like say, if I start at January 24th, 2022 and go forward 57 days, what date will that be? You can do all the same basic formulas that you would use before. For that one, I could just say equals this date plus 52 days, and that would be March 17th, 2022. Questions on formulas before I move on? So the next place we're going is functions. And functions are essentially templated formulas. So this is another table, a fairly small table, but it's a typical kind of table you might have. This is information about a club, health club, whatever kind of club, it's hypothetical, but this is the table. And these are the column headers, they're called. So these are what's in these columns. And then there's a row for each member of the club with their information. And I want to get information about my table. And to do that, I would use functions. So for example, one thing I might want to know is how many members I've got in my club. Of course, right now I can look and see there's 4, but if life is nice and I end up with 150 plus members, I can't just look at it and see. I need to add it up. And to do that, you come up here to functions and click this little arrow to the right side of it. And it gives you the most typically used ones at the top. If what you want to do isn't there, you can get into dozens and dozens and dozens of other formulas, other functions. We cover those in the intermediate class. For today, we're going to use the ones here because these are the ones you use 90% of the time. And what I want to do is count the members. So I would click on this one. I want to count numbers. It starts my function. The format of a function is it has an equal sign because it is a templated formula, if you will. Puts the name of the function. This function is called count. And then this is called the argument. And that is the range of cells you're going to be working with. So in this case, Excel guesses what I want to count. And it was pretty close, but what I really want to count is just these cells. So I'm going to change the formula just by clicking and holding the left mouse button, going down as far as I want, and then releasing the left mouse button. You can see now it says B2 through B6, B2 through B6. I hit enter, and it tells me there are 4 members in that range of cells. Let's do it a couple more.
Why does it look like 7? Why does it, should it be 7? Number of members? Shouldn't it be 7?
No, there's only 4 members, 1, 2, 3, 4. You're not summing this, you're counting.
Oh, all right, gotcha.
So it's telling me I've got 4 members. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Now I want to sum up, which is what you were doing. I want to sum up how much they're paying me each month. So that's another function. So I'm going to come up here to my functions. And in this case, I want sum to get the total. And again, Excel guessed what I wanted to sum up. It was way off, but I can just tell it. It started my function here. It says equal sum. To tell it what to sum up, I would again click on the first cell, hold my left mouse button, drag down till I get as far as I want to go, release my left mouse button. It's now says C2 through C6. That's right. I hit enter. So the sum of these cells is $606. Let me do one more and I'll stop for questions. I also want to know what's the average fee that's being paid. So you're getting the idea by now. I come up here, there's average. I click on that. Again, Excel guesses, it didn't guess very well. I'll show it what I want. The same range of cells. Hit enter. And the average is 152. There's my function, equals average cell 2 through C6. I could actually type this in instead of using the mouse and pointing. I could just type in C2 colon C6 and that would work as well. But it's typically, I find it easier to just use the mouse instead of typing. Questions about functions? Okay, so
once again, to choose, to choose the average numbers that you want, you left click the mouse and hover over the cells you want added or averaged.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's do one more. And just to kind of show you, I'm going to average these numbers. Doesn't make any sense, but I can still do it. So, and I want to put it here just to show you, you can put it anywhere you want it. You click where you want the answer to be. I come up here to my functions and I say, I want to average a group of numbers. It's guessing, it guessed way off. I left click and hold it, drag down and release it, and then hit enter.
Thank you.
Again, if I wanted to do it old school, I could just type B2 colon B6, but I find it easier to use the mouse than to type. Good question. Now, the reason these are so important is that typically you're getting numbers and these things are changing. So for example, a new member comes in. Billy Reed joins the club. I give him a tier number. He's starting in tier 1. Now, when I click out of this cell, that changes. Now it tells me I've got 5 members. So it automatically updated to reflect the current contents of the table. I'm going to charge Billy $125. Both of these numbers changed. My total fees, my average fees changed when I put that information in there. I'm looking at my numbers and June is getting a free ride here. She's paying way less than anybody else. So I'm going to bump her up to 150. And you'll watch here, both of these numbers are going to change when I hit enter to recalc everything based on changes to the table. If Bob Smith leaves the club, I just put my cursor here in the at the row number and left click to select that row, and then I'm going to right click and say clear the contents, wipe him out of my table. He's gone. I'm back down to 4 members and my numbers have adjusted to not have Billy in there or whoever that was. If I did that by accident, I can put it back, which I'm going to do. So that's the nice thing about functions. You can have functions referencing a table, and as the table increases, I can put my cursor over here and left click, right click, and insert a new table if I need to add another member. Now I've got an empty row. I can put in Jerry Williamson and put in his information and everything updates. How are we doing for time? I'm going to show you one more formula. This one is a little tricky, but it's one you use a lot. So I do want to show you how it works. And that's calculating a percent. And so I may want to know what percentage each person contributes to the total revenue that I'm getting. So I do another formula, and it's equal. And the formula for a percentage is pretty simple. You take that single cell, and it's got C2 by clicking there. And I want to divide it by the total, which is down here, total fees. And John is paying 21% of my revenue. Now there's a couple of different ways to copy this formula down to these other cells. Now, I could enter it in each one of them, but that's kind of tedious. Probably the easiest way for most people is to come down to this bottom right corner. And you'll see at that bottom right corner, there's a little box. If I put my cursor over that box, it changes. And now if I hold the left mouse button down and copy down, it's going to copy that formula to all those other cells. But as you can see, I've got a problem with my formula. This says it's 81%. This is smaller than this one, so it can't be 81. And these are saying I'm dividing by 0. So I know there's a problem with my formula. I look at this one, and it looks right. C2 divided by B10. Let's look at this formula. It says C3. That's right there. That's what that looks right. Divided by B11. B11 is average fee. I don't want to divide by average fee. I want to divide by total fee. So what happens when I copy a formula down? It increments the row number for every cell reference in that formula. So it went from C2B10 to C3B11, C4B12, C5B13. What I need to do is anchor that denominator. I don't want the denominator to change. And you can do that by putting a $sign in front of the column and a $sign in front of the row. That basically says, anchor that, don't change it. Now, if I copy it down again, it looks better. If I'm a little skeptical, I want to make sure that's right. I know the total of this column should be 100%. So I'm just going to do a check over here. And I'm going to come up and say, go ahead and sum up these numbers for me. Make sure they equal 100. They do equal 100. So it's good. Questions before we move on?
Yes, when you anchor that formula, when you anchor the column row, you're using a $sign. What if the numbers don't refer to monetary values?
Doesn't matter. It's just a convention. That $sign means don't change it. Yeah.
Thank you. So
in fact, I did that here, and it's actually percentages, not dollars.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. Good question. Thanks for clarifying that.
Wait.
Yeah. Go ahead. Carol?
If you're using this for business, how different is it from personal? If you were setting up.
You can use it for personal, business, anything you want to use it for. It's no difference.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
Tell me
Did you have a
again.
question, Carol?
Yeah, why? I missed that. When you put that formula in, why you anchored the B10?
Because if you don't, when you copy the formula down, it changed the denominator from B10 to B11. So it was pulling this number instead of this number. So I want to always use this number.
Okay.
So this says don't increment the row number for this reference due for this.
Yeah.
So as you see this one now, the numerator changes, the denominator doesn't.
Yep, gotcha. Thanks.
Yeah, that one is tricky, as I said, but it's a one you use a lot, so I wanted to cover that one. I want to quickly make sure we get some time to do some formatting. This one looks pretty nice, pretty nicely formatted table. We're going to start with one that's not the same one, but before I prettied it up and show you how you can format your information, I'm going to go through this fairly quickly, but stop me if you need to. But a lot of this is things you've done before with word processors. It works very similarly. If I wanted to bold this, I would just select that cell and click the bold up here. And I've now bolded it. I could do that to each one of these, but that would be tedious, especially if I had 42 columns. Instead, what you can do is I'm going to undo that. Select that entire row by coming over here to the row column and left clicking. And now if I say bold, it bolds that entire row. It even sets these other cells over here that I haven't used yet, so that if I do use them, it's going to be bolded as well. So it reformats literally that entire row all the way out. You can select just a range of cells if you don't want to select an entire column or entire row. For example, maybe I want to center everything down to here, but I don't want to center that average. So I can just select what I want to work on. I come up here to where you can center. And when you hover over any of these things, it tells you what it's going to do. Most of these are fairly explanatory, some aren't, but if you're not sure, just hover over it. So it now centered all those cells. It did not center that one because I didn't pick that one. Okay. You can select an entire column just by clicking on the entire column. This is money, currency, so I'm going to click the $, and it will format it as currency. If I was using something else, euros or any other type of currency, I can change the currency. It defaults to 2 decimal places. That's normally how currency is done. But in my case, I never charge less than a whole $1, so I don't need those zeros. It's just taking up space. So I can come over here and decrease the number of decimal places and get rid of those zeros. This is a percentage. Do the same thing. I select the entire column, come over here to percents. Maybe I want to add 1 decimal place there, so I can click again over here where I increase or decrease decimal places and add 1 decimal place. Let me pause. I covered a lot of stuff there. Everybody still with me? Carol, did you have a question?
Yeah, I do. I want my columns to all be wide enough to contain what's in them.
Yep,
You know,
we're
like,
going there next. We're going there next. We got several of those to deal with. Let's do that one next. In fact, I'm chopping off part of the name. So I need to change this column width. 2 ways to do it. They both start at the same place. You come over here and move to right between the 2 columns. And my cursor changes to arrows pointing in each direction. If I hold my left mouse button down, I can drag that out to be any size I want it. So that's one way. I'm going to put it back where it was. The other way, which is better if you got a big table, is get those same arrows, but now double click. And what it does, it automatically resizes that column to fit the cell that has the most characters in it. Because if this had 527 rows in it, I would have to scroll all the way through to find the cell with the most characters in it. Just by clicking here, double clicking there, it automatically adjusts it so it fits correctly. But either way works. I got a similar problem here. I'm chopping off part of the column description that really says monthly fee, but I only see monthly F. So I could use my double click trick and that would work, but I got a lot of ugly white space here and I don't like a lot of extra white space. So let me put it back like it was. What I can do instead is I can take that word fee and wrap it around underneath the word monthly and make that row larger so it would fit. And to do that, I can just come up here and select this icon. And again, if I hover over it, it says wrap text. If you look at the icon, it's showing you what it's going to do. It had ABC, but it's going to take the C and wrap it around underneath the A and the B. So I'll do that. And that's what it does. It takes the second word, wraps it around under the first word. I would probably want to center that, make it look a little nicer. And now I could actually do my double click and get a little bit more white space out. And to my eye, that looks nicer than having all that white space. I got the same problem here. It's not as obvious because, but the AL is actually bleeding over into the next column. Since that column is blank, I can still see it. But if I ended up putting something in that column, then it's going to now chop off the AL of total. So it's the same problem. So I could do all the steps I did over here. But again, I'm fairly lazy, so I don't want to have to do that multiple times. What I can do is I can grab this one that's formatted the way I like it and come up here to this paintbrush and click that. And that's the format painter. And if I click here, it's going to paint that format over to that cell. So instead of me having to go through all those steps, it just did it automatically. What's even better, if I wanted to paint that format to all of these cells, I can do it at one time and it saves me a lot of work. As before, these are now set up to use that. If later on I put a header here and it was too long to fit, it would automatically wrap it.
Does the format painter, if you would click on, say, the row instead, could you do it that way? Or no, you have to drag across the entire row?
That's
Yeah.
a good question. I don't know. I've never tried to do that. Maybe let's try. So, I don't know if that's going to work, but let's click this one, click the paintbrush. And yep, it did work. So yep, you can do that.
Okay. Okay.
Yep, good.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. I learned something.
Never did I think I would teach anybody something in this way.
All right, great. Oh, we're doing pretty good with time. We've got a few more things I want to show you. So let me keep going here. So next thing I want to do is to make this table stand out a little bit more. And so one of the things I can do is what we did in the other one is to put lines around all the cells. That's right here. So I click here and I select all borders. Seeing I have a lot of other options, but we're just going to do all borders, which puts borders around all four sides of each cell in that table. Makes it stand out a little bit more. If I want to accentuate the column headers to make sure it's clear those are column headers, I can select them, come up here to my paint bucket and grab a color. I had blue before, I'll pick green just to show you a difference. And now it's green. I'm just about done. I see something down here. This is currency, but it's not showing as currency. So I'm going to click here and make that currency. And oops, it put hash signs there. And what it's saying is it can't display what I've put in there. So no problem. I'll just do my double click and it'll expand that one out. So I do want the 2 decimal places for that one because it is an average. So it again, it automatically changed it. If it's text, it just bleeds over, but if it's a number, it's got to fit in the cell. And if it doesn't fit, it'll give you those hashtags. All right, and that pretty much is all of the formatting, and we got just a couple of minutes, but let me open it up for questions. Anybody need to see anything again, or I'll even entertain any Excel related questions at this point.
Dale, this is Joe. And I have a question about, I'm not going to remember all these little detailed functions. So is there a cheat sheet Or if I put my mouse over them, do they show an explanation of what they do?
Yeah, all these, again, if you hover over anything, it tells you this one's going to bold it, this one's going to italicize it. This is going to give you a fill color, and it even says it colors the background of the cell to make them stand out. So yeah, when you hover over any of these, it tells you what they're going to do.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, most of them are fairly obvious, but some of them, like I would not have known what that one was probably, even though once I know what it is, it makes sense and it makes it easier for me to find it again. But yeah.
Yeah, back in the 70s and 80s, I used to make spreadsheets like this all the time. I was the spreadsheet king, but you forget about all the little intricacies.
Yeah, it
Thank you.
does. Yeah, sure. Okay. Any other questions before we move on to the closing? I just want to check and see. Okay, nothing in the chat. Now, Kim has put some information in the chat. I want to go ahead and call your attention to it. She has actually put some additional classes there that are related to this class, some classes I'm teaching and some other related classes. So if you are interested in any of those classes, you can click that link. So let me go on to the closing then. So just to quickly summarize, we talked about how to find and use templates, how to create simple formulas, how to use functions, and how to format spreadsheets.